You are listening to Exploring Sacred with your host, Denise Iwana Francisco, on the Temple Within Radio and Digital Media Network, giving voice to the sacred.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a brand new day. Welcome to a beautiful Wednesday. And welcome to a brand new day in your life, brand new moment in your life. And every day we know is an opportunity to begin again, to start all over, or to keep on doing what we've been doing. So hello and welcome to Exploring Sacred. This morning we're going to talk about the subject of initiations, life changes, all of those wonderful ups and downs and twisty-turny, sometimes hairpin points in our lives, where sometimes we're not sure where it's leading or how it happened or why it's happening and who we're going to be after it has happened. So I welcome everybody into the chat room this morning. If you happen to be on the Exploring Sacred page there on Facebook, please jump right on in and I'll give you the link. Good morning, Rob. You have that Good Morning Vietnam intonation down. That's right. Being the daughter of two Vietnam veterans, perhaps there's an influence there. I'm certain that they've heard it many times, or that they did hear it many times. All right, here we are, and I'm going to go ahead and post it for everyone. This morning we're talking about life changes and initiations, and some of them are ceremonial, and some of them don't feel very ceremonial at all. Quite frankly. Some of them can feel like we've been run over by a pickup truck or a semi-truck, and it's not very pleasant at all. And yet, in our lifetime, we have a series, I believe, of initiations or changes or moments in time where we're brought to a point where we feel as though we're being asked to turn left, to turn right, or to keep on going straight. And we know that our life may not ever be quite the same ever again. And it can be really scary. Some initiations we do purposefully. Last night, Todd and I were just delighted to be asked to be part of a young man's initiation. In this case, I was asked to be the sponsor for the son of a dear friend who took his Catholic confirmation last night, and I was asked to do that, as I'm often asked to be part of sacred ceremony for young people. Sometimes it's for nieces or nephews or godchildren, grandchildren, my Takojas, and so I get requests, Grandma, Unchi, Auntie, will you come over and be part of this ceremony with me? Will you be part of this part of my life with me? And if I feel as though it is something that the young person has chosen in order to experience the fullness of their life, or they've consciously made a choice as to a path that they would like to walk down, I most often say yes, unless I feel as though it's a path that's going to be detrimental, right? If they invite me to sit down and have a drink with them or do drugs with them, I'm certainly not going to be part of that initiation at a young age. But when I'm asked to participate in something that is sacred to them, I'm honored to be asked, number one, and happy to do so. And last night it was Catholic confirmation, which is known as a sacrament in the Catholic Church, and Gavin consciously chose to be confirmed in the Catholic faith and asked me to be his sponsor. And before I agreed to be his sponsor, I asked him, why did you choose me to be your sponsor? And he said, because what I really appreciate about you is that you are open and aware of other world religions and other forms of spirituality. And that's part of what I wish to have in my spiritual life, in my religious life, is to be open and aware and educated like you are. And I said, well, that's as fine an answer that I could hope to receive. And so, yes, I will sponsor you on your path to becoming a consciously awake and aware and an open-minded, open-hearted Christian Catholic. And so the ceremony was beautiful. It was high ceremony in the Cathedral of St. Andrew in Grand Rapids. And Todd and I and his mom and dad, we had an evening of it. And afterward, Todd took us all for ice cream. And it was a great deal of fun. And I was honored to participate in that initiation. No different than I was honored last summer, not too far from this time of the year, to be part of an initiation for my niece, Tara Dolknife, who asked me to be her sponsor for her naming ceremony. It was a different form of a naming ceremony, but in Catholic confirmation, there's also the receiving of a name, the choosing of a name. And last night, Gavin chose John after St. John the Beloved. For Tara, Spirit speaks to the sponsor, and so her name came to me from Spirit. Chetan Lutawi. And Red-Tail Hawk Woman is the name that was given to her naming ceremony, and wanting to follow that path of spirituality. And so as an elder to both of these young people, knowing how important it is to their soul path and to them as human beings, I was very happy to participate and to sponsor that. There are times in our lives like those times where we're consciously aware of an initiation. And we can become initiated into many things in life. We can be initiated into marriage. We can be initiated into First Communion, baptism. Those are some of the initiations we may think of. But we can also be initiated into groups, into organizations. And personally, we can be initiated into the next step upon our soul's journey in many ways. We can be initiated by illness. We can be initiated by joy. We can be initiated by love. There are many ways that we are brought to the next. Initiation, for me anyway, represents being brought to the next through a portal, if you will, through a step that brings us to the next. And sometimes that step is a beautiful thing. It has a lot of joy. It has sometimes a lot of work. I mean, I know personally, having been confirmed at the age of 15, it felt like I had gone to catechism forever in the Catholic Church in order to be confirmed. And so, honestly, confirmation night for me was half a celebration of the fact that I didn't have to go to catechism anymore, if we're being honest. I made it through. Lordy, I made it through. I remember those feelings too. It was also a pinnacle point for me in speaking to the parish priest at that time, Father Kussler, about my gifts of being able to see and to be with Spirit. And so it was childlike in the, happy dancing about not having to spend every Wednesday in catechism again for the rest of my life. And at the same time, it changed the course of my life because I had a dialogue with the priest that evening about why it is that I see and I hear spirits. And initiations are sometimes big and open like that, in that it's eye-opening. It changes courses. Yeah, Meg Anutto, I know that you also completed all of those steps. Yeah. Rob is saying in 1983 he was confirmed by a female pastor. Yeah, there are lots of things that we go through, and we do them at different stages of our lives. So for Meg and I, around the age of 15 is when we're confirmed in the Catholic Church. And I know in other faiths it can be a different age, including global religions, right? Everybody has their initiation time. Usually around the age of 8 or 9 is when we have First Communion in the Catholic Church. And so last night was absolutely beautiful. And yes, part of it was said in Latin. But what I found most beautiful, there at the Cathedral of St. Andrews in Grand Rapids, it's spectacular. And it was beautiful being there because most of you know that my work, 90% of my work is edited by someone that I love so much, Sister Irene Mary McDonnell. And Sister Irene was the head of the English department there at Catholic Central, which is the home of St. Andrew's Cathedral. So it was great to be there on the campus again in the corridors of Sister Irene and Sister Joellen. But what I loved about the singing last night is that most of it was done in Gregorian chant. Both a female choir and a male choir, but most of the Gregorian chant was actually done by the women's choir. And it was spectacular, resonating throughout the cathedral. So high ceremony going on. And one of the things that we learn as we get older, especially if we study esoteric spirituality, metaphysics, or if we go deep into the roots of the origins of the ceremonies that happen in churches and synagogues and ashrams and all of those wonderful places, sacred ceremonies on the reservation. When you look at the origins and you study that, all of a sudden whatever the priest or the shaman or the medicine person or the pastor or the rabbi or the imam is doing is richer and deeper because you understand the roots and the origin of it. The roots and the origin and what's really happening when the host or the communion wafers are being prayed over. And once you realize what all is going on and you begin to feel the presence of spirit in the room or in the sweat lodge or in the temple, wherever we happen to be, understanding an initiation that we are going through is so deep and meaningful for those that take the time to study and to go back to the roots so that it's not just, I have a friend of mine who calls Catholic Mass the magic show. He's a lifelong Catholic and a little bit of a cynic, and he says that, it's nothing but a magic show. There's a lot of magic going on, and there is, honestly, and so knowing that as you're going through the initiation, sometimes people just go through an initiation willy-nilly because that's what the crowd is doing, or that's what their family has always done, or that's what their friends tell them they really ought to do, without really knowing what it is that they're committing to or the vow that they are taking on a soul level. Sometimes initiations come with vows. Sometimes they come with a blessing, an anointing. Sometimes they simply happen spontaneously. Oh, I'm glad you found your way here too, Meg. Good morning, Angie. She's saying, I had Sister Irene for English freshman year. Beautiful soul. Yeah, Sister Irene. Oh my. Sister Irene. She is a peach. And she is now living, believe it or not. Good morning, Marianne. Hey, Kathy. She is now living in Rapid City, South Dakota. She celebrated her Jubilee as a nun, a Dominican sister, and now she is living in Rapid City, South Dakota. Sometimes the initiations of our life are set out upon, speaking of Dominic, he's knocking at the door and tormenting Gabriel as he does every Wednesday morning. So we'll just open the door and let Dominic in. Sometimes initiations happen spontaneously. Sometimes it can be those come to Jesus moments, or those moments when we find ourselves on our knees, or those moments when we find ourselves in absolute befuddlement. What just happened to me now? What just happened to me? We can find ourselves in places where maybe our friends have changed, our associates have changed, family has changed, or we've simply changed. Sometimes those are the most profound initiations, that the ones that come with all of a sudden having the ability and the stamina to set boundaries in our lives with people and places and thought forms and belief systems. Sometimes initiation comes when we experience the death of someone that we love or something that we love, and initiation begins. Sometimes an initiation begins when we bring a cat into a house that is already occupied by a Jack Russell Terrier, right? The initiation of... Now what? Every initiation brings something new to us, whether we feel it immediately or not. Last night at initiation and participating, part of the Catholic confirmation rite is that as a sponsor, I place my right hand on Gavin's right shoulder. And I've done this for my godson and for my brother and others in the past. And you can feel the energy of initiation. And so as he was being anointed, taking his name John, as the sponsor, I declare his name John. The bishop asks, "And your name?" And I respond, "His name is John." And in that moment, feeling the presence of Saint John the Beloved, overlighting Gavin, we choose those names because we wish to emulate that. For me, it was Catherine Therese, Catherine of Siena and Teresa of Lisieux or Avila. For my niece, Chetalutawi, Red-tailed Hawk Woman, I declared her name in front of the community, and why and how it was given to me and what it represents. And she now walks with that. What about the initiation of all of a sudden being a divorced woman? And you walk with that, or a divorced man, and you walk through that initiation, and you then wear that experience. Or I think about the young people. I was watching last night all of the young people. I love working with young people. And I looked across the sea of young people from Our Lady of the Lake and St. Patrick in Parnell, and I thought to myself, and what about the initiation for some of these young people when they finally declare that perhaps they are gay or lesbian, or they wish to become transgender, or all of, a myriad of things that will come along in their life, because this isn't going to be the last of their initiations, and walking through those practical life initiations. What about those times and the initiation of declaring who you are at that time? Of honoring who you are. I believe that initiation really is often about declaring who you are and bringing to yourself more of who you feel you are or who you wish to become, or who your soul knows that you are to become. Years ago when Joaquin was here, he was here for a speaking engagement up north, and he said to me, "I have a present for you." And I have it here in my office, and it's hanging where I can see it every day. And he said, I had it made for you. A Ute man made it for you. I said, okay. And he took it out of its wrapping, and it's a beautiful beaded piece that's a very large cross. And the cross is made up of octagonal mirrors. Octagonal mirrors. And he said, I had this made for you because, sometimes we walk two paths and we bring those paths together. And I said, well, explain to me why you wish to have this cross made for me with the mirrors, which represent the Wakians, the thunder beings, the thunder and the lightning spirit, the Wakan Washte. And he said, because you bring those spirits to earth. You have a gift that brings those spirits to earth. And whether, he didn't really roll his eyeballs when he said it, but I could feel the eyeball roll. So whether you're walking as a Catholic with a pipe, or you're walking just with the pipe, or in your case, walking with both, This represents that no matter what way that you've been initiated, you walk with both things. You walk with the Chinupa, but you walk with the Chinupa bringing the spirits to earth. And you walk following that man that they called Jesus. And I thought that was really beautiful, the recognition of initiations that don't have to be exclusive of one another, but that they can be combined and they can be walked together in a beautiful way. In a beautiful way. They don't have to be exclusive. It's what do we do with all of the initiations in our life? What do we do with that? I have marveled that in the last week, I have had 2 clients back to back, both come to see me, both daughters of Vietnam veterans, working through being, the things that crop up, being the daughters of Vietnam veterans. And I had a client who is adopted, who recently found her biological family, all in 1 week. Sometimes, you see, we walk through initiations, I believe, so that we can help the next person get through theirs. To help the next person get through theirs. In speaking to these women about my age, about being the daughters of Vietnam veterans, I said, sometimes the initiations that our parents go through cannot help but affect who we are. And those initiations that our ancestors walked through and lived through or died within also live in our blood and in our bones. Their initiations are not exclusive, and our initiations are not always exclusive either. Sometimes initiations begin very early, right? The moment of baptism, or the moment of being given up for adoption, or the moment for some when they're born and their mother dies in childbirth, or their father dies shortly thereafter. Initiations can begin really early. And what do we do with those? Sometimes we race through them. And we're on to the next initiation. We're on to the next level without really stopping to take a look at, what does this mean? How do I feel about that? Who am I now? And will people accept who I am now? Will those that I love still love me? Do I still love the people that I thought I did love after this initiation? I'm not so sure. I'm going to take a little look here in the chat room. Sometimes I just get... Yep, right on, Rob. There are so many initiations. Sometimes they are community-wide, sometimes they are country-wide, sometimes they are global initiations that we walk through. One of the things that I really appreciated last night about the bishop we have here in Grand Rapids is David Walkowiak. And there were a lot of young women, of course, in the group, and a lot of young men in the group. And he said, one of his favorite passages is about St. John the Baptist baptizing Jesus in the river. And at that moment, the skies opened and a dove appeared. And they say, and peace descended like a dove. And the voice of the Creator said, to the effect, "You are my son in whom I am greatly pleased." And for all of the years that I've been to confirmation, that's the phraseology that I've always heard. And last night the bishop said, "I want you all to remember something. You are the son in which the Creator is greatly pleased, and you are the daughters of the Creator in whom he is greatly pleased." And I thought to myself, my goodness, the rite of that initiation has changed since I last heard it, since I stood up for my godson Blake. Acknowledging the sons and the daughters. And for some, probably old school Catholics, that was probably a little bit of a cage rattler, right? But there were a lot of smiles and a lot of head nodding at that moment, including the 80-some-year-old grandmother that was sitting next to me sponsoring her grandson. Hearing those words was an initiation. And he said, if you want true happiness in your life, remain close to Spirit. Stay close to Spirit. And if you really want to be happy in life, do something for somebody else. Doing things for other people brings great happiness. Remember that. Remember that you are loved. Remember to stay close to Spirit. And remember that happiness can come in great measure from helping others. Those words were initiations, and it made me think to myself the power of our words as we go through our day. There are momentary initiations that can happen throughout a lifetime. We have really great days because somebody said something empowering to us, or sometimes we have really crappy days because somebody initiated us into a feeling of being loathful or shamed or angry or less than. Words have the power to initiate, not only in high ceremony, I believe, but also in day-to-day conversation, in emails, in radio shows, right? Blog talk, whatever it happens to be. How are we using our words? How are our words serving us and serving others? Words can serve to initiate change, to empower others who are not capable of being empowered in one moment or another, depending on an initiation that they may be going through. Initiations, when they are done in high ceremony, and when I say high ceremony, I'm not just talking about what happens in a church or a synagogue, but or a temple or an ashram, but I'm talking about even in shamanic realms or spiritual realms of other sorts. Initiations happen, and as we are adults, when we understand that we're being brought into something, I always ask people, what is it about that initiation that brings you to it and prompts you to walk through it? Well, I don't know, it just sounded like a really great good thing to do, and gee, so-and-so, the neighbor lady down the road did it, and so why do you feel that you would like to do that? Well, now that you say that, Denise, I'm not really sure about that. Well, take a moment maybe and think about it before you just walk down that aisle and through that initiation. Every initiation brings change. Sometimes we don't recognize it until sometime later, the change that has happened, and we can look back. I think especially in spiritual circles or metaphysical communities, initiations sometimes aren't really deeply investigated because we feel like, well, this is the next in the progression. And so I want to do what's next because everybody else is doing it. But sometimes we need to stop and think to ourselves, am I ready for this next? And sometimes we may think, I know that I am not ready, but we know deep in our soul that we are. We just know that it's going to bring some work, some internal work. Maybe some healing work or diving into some places within ourselves that we just haven't wanted to do because we just haven't had time. Haven't had the resources, haven't had the wherewithal or the wits about us to go through it. So the reason that I bring all of this up is because initiations can happen spontaneously. We can be asked to participate in somebody else's initiation, and sometimes we knowingly enter into initiation. And you know how I am. I ask, so who's initiating you, and have you really checked that out? Have you really checked that out? Have you asked questions? Because there's a vow in there somewhere in most initiations. And sometimes an initiation is a progression. There's a methodology. There are steps, a call out, and a return. What do I mean by that? Sometimes when we're in ceremony or we're asked, we ask someone to do ceremony for us, there are things that, happen afterwards. For example, last year at my Homblecha, part of my Homblecha ceremony is something that I have to do yet this July. 1 year from the date of my Homblecha, there's another ceremony that I have to do. And I am purposefully going to do that. And there are things that happen if I don't fulfill that agreement. There are things that happen if I don't. And Spirit will constantly remind me, of course, to do that. But the ceremony isn't complete until I complete this next. So literally, I've been in Homblecha ceremony for going on a year. I'm still in the ceremony. It won't be complete until July. So sometimes initiations, we have to ask the question, so how long am I in this initiation? How long am I in the ceremony? And how long am I in the initiation? The ceremony may only last 4 days. The Homblecha ceremony itself only lasted 4 days. The initiation, however, lasts for 1 year. It lasts for 1 year. And being consciously aware that I'm still in that initiation, I consciously asked for the initiation. The medicine man that helped facilitate it, my brother Guy and my sisters, all there to support me, continue to support me through the 1 year. And I'm consciously aware of that. And I'm okay with it. So initiation, whether it's the initiation into the first level of Reiki or Amadeus, or light touch, whatever it happens to be, is a process. The initiation by illness is a process. A woman asked me the other day, Denise, I don't know, this whole, my spiritual journey feels like it's just topsy-turvy right now. I don't know where I'm supposed to go on my spiritual path. And so I asked her, well, what have you been doing? Well, I've been doing a great deal of healing and working with my therapist, and working on some things from childhood and moving through that. And I asked the question, did you ever suppose that perhaps your spiritual path is to walk through the journey of healing? And she said, no, I never considered healing as part of my spiritual path. And I said, well, I believe that healing and spiritual path go hand in hand. So perhaps you are doing exactly what your spirit has called you to do along your path. And remember that it is a process. It is a process. And it needs to be treated as such. You ever meet anybody that runs from one initiation to the next? They make me dizzy in all of their running around and dealing with energy. Yeah. Meg is saying, going through the knothole for the good feels ouchy, going through, but emerge with freedom and self-empowerment. We are never alone going through the knothole. Exactly. We're never alone going through the knothole. We aren't. And that's the beautiful part of walking this particular journey, all of us, is that we know that. It's not that we understand it. We know it. We don't believe it. We know it. We are never, ever alone. And that's the beauty. Sometimes we can feel as though we're alone because sometimes spirit stands just far enough away to help us gain our own legs, to sturdy ourselves, to bolster who we are through the initiation. And Rob is saying, I've heard that Scientology initiation pledges the soul of the initiate for 1 billion years. Yes, those that, from my understanding, become Scientologists actually sign a paper that declares the service of their soul for 1 billion years. 1 billion years. That's a long time. Right? For those that become sun dancers, they don't sign a contract, but the agreement with Spirit is that they will sun dance for 4 years. Unless, it's a special circumstance where a medicine man says, part of the ceremony, if Ivan Looking Horse had said to me, okay, so sister, next year you need to dance one day at the ceremony of Sundance, then I would do that for 1 day. But typically, for a sun dancer, there's a commitment of 4 years. That means 4 consecutive years they sun dance. For some people who have a healing ceremony, UWeepy or low weepy ceremony, they may be asked to dance 1 day or 4 days at a sun dance. So understanding the commitment, and when you agree to that, walking through that, fulfilling that commitment, fulfilling that initiation. Yeah, a torn ACL may get you out of that. Yeah, most likely. I mean, because a torn ACL or being very, very sick, what might happen is perhaps somebody might dance for you. Or perhaps there will be a special accommodation made for someone. And when we're being asked to be a sponsor for someone, we have to really carefully consider. Earlier this year, I was approached by somebody who wanted me to sponsor him. He's going to be an eagle dancer this year. What does that mean? He's going to be an eagle dancer. That means that he will be tied to the Sundance tree or pierced to the Sundance tree for 4 days. Not for a round or for a day or for a couple of rounds. He will be pierced to the tree for 4 days. And will I come to South Dakota and sponsor him? Because as sponsors, we need to be prepared for what that means as well. If we are the person preparing the space of initiation, whether that is ordination or Sundance or bringing into shamanic practice or baptism, whatever we are preparing for a place and a space of initiation. Sometimes I perform weddings. That is also initiation. As the person preparing the space and holding the space of initiation for another person, we must be very, very mindful of our words and of our behavior and how it is that we are in that space. Words are powerful. Actions are powerful because the ceremonies of initiation are deep. We're talking about soul initiations. And what about those of hospice workers that are helping initiate people from this life to the next? Or a spirit doula, or the common phrase now is death doula. What about death doulas? Being and preparing that space of initiation. Being mindful of that. It doesn't call us to be a saint, but it calls us to be mindfully aware and consciously, soulfully aware. And a lot of you know that sometimes I can be really anal about that, having that space just so. And that's just my preference, is to try to be really pristine in that. Doesn't mean that I'm perfect, because Lord and everybody else knows I'm not. But when I'm creating sacred ceremony and sacred space for initiation, or when I'm with somebody who is in the process of initiation, working through the ordeals of being a woman who was raised by somebody who went through Vietnam, somebody going through the initiation of reconciling being adopted, meeting a birth family, meeting with her the other day, and holding space for her to be and to express anger and resentment and hopefulness. All of those places, even when, for me, out here in the Enchanted Forest, it's the season of birth. I've got a really pregnant groundhog and a really sweet opossum. I named her Violet. It's the season of birth. And so we're bringing babies. We have a baby crow recently born. Oh, it's loud. And so it is the season of initiation because it's the season of birth. And so there are lots of fresh apples out every day for the little mamas that are getting ready to have their babies. So we celebrate even that here. My friend Tana down in Florida is helping to give birth to butterflies. Initiation, right? As a birth doula, I feel like a midwife here, helping those little four-legged mamas and daddies bring their babies into the world. Last year it was the foxes. Many of you got to see them. Being mindfully aware that initiations are always happening around us. That's recognizing moments of grace. Infinite grace, as Meg would say. Infinite grace is all around us. And joy. And having fun. And being frivolous. Right? Being 17 again some days. Initiations don't always have to be a perpetual state of piety and reverence. Sometimes we need to be irreverent. We need to enjoy the fruits of this initiation of our soul in being human. There's an initiation. Holy buckets. It's a big one. Meg is saying, if one of us walks through the process they are initiated into and completes it, the collective whole benefits and evolves due to our conscious being, yes, being enlightened, yes, and anchored in the whole. And we, the whole, are able to access the story and the wisdom of it. Beautifully written, Meg, yes. Okay, and Rob is saying, I just walked outside to load equipment in the car and saw 2 turkey vultures fly by, very close to the ground. Very. Recognizing the blessing in that. For me, I refer to those turkey vultures as the Wakions, thunderbirds, and for me they bring blessings. Death and rebirth, rebirth and death, death and renewal, initiation. They're beautiful. This initiation into a human life from our spirit life, our home in spirit, is a doozy. And I believe that the good bishop was correct last night when he stated that in order to be happy, staying close to spirit is always a great good thing, and helping someone outside of ourselves always contributes to our happiness, and as Meg said, the happiness and the joy of the whole. And we're never too old for an initiation into a new thought, into a new path of study, an initiation into letting go of what no longer nourishes or nurtures us. Every moment is a moment to begin again. Every moment is a moment to see the grace in living. And to look at moments of grace, moments of initiation, in whatever way they come, as soil for the growth of our soul, rather than a punishment. That old wheel of karma also brings gifts. Profound gifts. With that, everyone, thank you for being with me today. Thank you for shining your light as only you can shine it. And thank you for being part of grace for me and being part of universal grace for so many. Blessings be, everyone. Have a great day. Get out there and shine your light.